Hello, everyone. Welcome to Travel, Explore, Celebrate Life by Veena World. I'm your host, Neil Patil. And well, like every week, Sunila and me come to you with interesting topics. But today we have my friend Samar. Now, Samar and I, along with being great friends, also worked together for a long time on Australia. But today we are going to talk about New South Wales and Sydney. So, Samar, welcome to Travel, Explore, Celebrate Life.
Thanks, Neil. It's great to be here.
Awesome. Now, Samar, in our personal interactions, in our professional interactions, we've always spoken about a lot of Australia, Australia, Australia.
Correct.
Now, today we are going to talk about Sydney and New South Wales. Two things that really come to someone's mind when we talk about New South Wales or when we talk about Sydney are but obvious. It's the majestic Sydney Opera House and the Sydney Harbour Bridge. But we don't want this podcast to be about these two things because people know about it. People know the interesting stories about it. And we sent out a newsletter last week telling people, like, why is the Sydney Harbour Bridge so iconic? But I wanted to ask you, like, if I were to come to you and tell you that, okay, Samar, I'm going to go to Sydney or I'm going to go to New South Wales, what are like three things that come to your mind, which you would tell me as a traveler that, hey, like if you're going to Sydney or New South Wales, go here. And like on Travel, Explore, Celebrate Life, we generally want your personal preferences or personal ideas. So tell me.
Great. I mean, that's fantastic because, we are, as much as you, we are very keen to get people to explore beyond the icons, such as the Sydney Opera House and the Sydney Harbour Bridge. And I think there's Sydney and New South Wales both as a destination have depth and width of experiences and fun things to do that people will love once they're there. So some of the lesser known icons of Sydney are the beaches which you can access very easily from the city itself. So the more famous one is called Bondi Beach, but the other one which is very popular with locals is Manly. Then you have beaches of Coogee. You have smaller beaches where only locals you will find them. Swimming, snorkeling, stand-up boarding, and just relaxing on a weekend or on a holiday. So I think the beaches are highly underrated when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
Sydney itself and even New South Wales. And I think that's definitely an experience that people must partake of when they're there and when they want to roam around and have some free time. Then there's also the cafe culture. Now, a lot of people know that Australia is famous for its coffee, but Sydney has a huge cafe culture, and the cafes are again spread across all the different parts of the small towns and the smaller localities where people live. So there's amazing coffees that you can have no matter wherever you go in Sydney and the state as well. Then the other region is the Hunter Valley. Hunter Valley, not many people are familiar. It's the oldest wine producing region of Australia. So the wines that were first planted in Australia were planted in the Hunter Valley region, which is in New South Wales, and only 2.5 hours away from Sydney. So as early as very early in the 1800s, this region was the first wine producing region. So it's famous for its reds and its whites as well. So really, I encourage people to go there, and not just for the wines, but even for the other experiences and the food that is used and with the wine and food pairings that people can enjoy. I think it's fantastic. And then the last but not the least, I think people don't realize that Sydney as a city has some amazing history, heritage, and culture. It was the first city of Australia. It's the oldest city of Australia. It's the largest city in the sense it has the maximum number of people living there. And the city started from an area called the Rocks. So it was warehouses and like earlier days when there were no airports, the only way to get around and travel around and trade was by sea on by the ocean. So everything was built around these ports. So it's no
Yeah.
different in Sydney, and you can really enjoy this history, heritage, culture by just uh, walking around the region, or even taking some tours which are guided tours. And a part of that culture, part of that history and heritage culture is also the world's oldest living culture, which is the Aboriginal and indigenous culture, which again people are not aware about. So I think some of these things, will make it a far more unique experience when they go there.
I think what you said was Sydney being the largest city is has so much and has a lot of everything. And like often people forget that Sydney is not the capital of Australia, because being the largest city, being so popular, people think that Sydney is the capital of Australia. Guys, Canberra is the capital of Australia, and we all know that. But yes, Sydney is really vibrant. And I think one of the best things about it is that connectivity from India to Sydney is more frequent. You can have multiple airlines, multiple flights going there throughout the day, and that's one of the great things. Now, you mentioned three things. I'll come to Sydney a little later, but you mentioned three things. One was beaches, one was the cafe culture, and the third one was the Hunter Valley region that people really haven't heard of, or it's very nascent in the Indian travel, in the minds of the Indian traveler. Now, because both of us like food, let's talk about the cafe culture and let's talk about the food and the coffee, because you love your coffee, and most of the times we meet is generally not for dinners but for coffee. So that's a good thing. Now, you are a vegetarian, I am a hardcore non-vegetarian, which means that we are polar opposites. But often there is a misconception. People think Sydney and New South Wales, you will have, is a meat lover's paradise, is a seafood lover's paradise. But being vegetarian and having done multiple trips to this region, would you say that it is difficult for a vegetarian to get around Australia in terms of the cafe culture that you're talking about?
Well, no, honestly, I think this is a great point, Neil. And again, there's a lot of notions about, Australia being a largely meat-eating country. You'll be surprised to know that, in fact, a very large percentage of Australians are vegetarian and even vegan. So there's a big movement towards moving away from meats and moving away from dairy products. So there's a whole wide range variety, and even when I went there first in 2010, I've never had a complaint about sufficient options or enough options for me as a vegetarian to lunch or dine or whatever, even in the regions. So there's a dearth of experiences available. There's a dearth of restaurants that you can explore, whether it's Indian, whether it's Japanese, other cuisines. There's Greek, there's South American. There's there's so much that one can enjoy. And if you look at some of the more popular ones, cafes are where it all started from, and then growing into from cafes, going into more evolved food offerings. So let me start there with the cafes. So one of the most, in fact, the world's most Instagrammable cake started in a small little pastry called the Black Star. The not the pastry shop, not a pastry but a pastry shop. So the Black Star pastry shop, which sells something called the strawberry watermelon cake, and they've now slowly expanded to many parts of the city and even in the region. So that's something that definitely should be on everybody's list to do and have it with a coffee. Or if that's not up your alley, then famous master chef, who's very popular for his desserts, Renaud, and his three brothers who run the Koi dessert bar. So they've got some amazing menus there of dessert. They have a full dessert degustation menu. Just you can layer different desserts over a few courses. So that's something that I would highly recommend. I did it way back, I think in 2015 or 2016. I'd done that when I was staying close by, and took a group of friends and colleagues there to have some desserts, and it was just simply amazing to watch him there, right there doing all the stuff that he was doing on MasterChef. And then if you come to vegetarian, even Indian, there's so many really good Indian restaurants, again dotted all across the landscape of Sydney, different parts of Sydney. And it's natural because there's a fairly large Indian diaspora in Sydney and also in the region. So you do get really good quality Indian food there. But moving away from vegetarian to something up your alley that I know you would love. I mean, freshly shucked oysters from the sea. So
Yeah,
Sydney
that
is famous
sounds
for
really
its
good.
Sydney is famous for its rock oysters. So you can there are actually oyster farms where you can go and you can go in a small boat, go to this farm, and then enjoy an oyster shucking experience. So a few places that you can do that. So that's amazing. Then moving into the more evolved ones, that for the size of the city that Sydney is, it probably has the highest concentration of hatted restaurants. Now, we don't have a concept of Michelin star, but hatted is an
Yep.
equivalent of that. So it has a huge concentration of hatted restaurants, and again offering different kinds of cuisines, including.
Samar, does a hat mean that this is like a premium top of the top of the thing restaurant, or what does a hat mean?
No, so again, there's this misunderstanding that hatted restaurants or Michelin star restaurants must be super expensive. They don't
Yeah,
need to be. So the evaluation is, based on many things. It's on the quality of, the food, the service, how clean they are. All the taste and flavors are the ones that actually are most important. So of course there are hatted restaurants which are expensive, but there are also very affordable restaurants that also have hats. So it doesn't really have to be a superlative, a super expensive experience. And then Sydney also has not one but two in terms of bars. And again, this is something that it's very popular because every evening you'll find most people in Sydney after work, they're out at a bar with a friend or a
that's
group of
true.
friends, or
Yeah.
with work colleagues having a drink. And it's just so ingrained in the culture that after work drink, which is almost like on a daily basis. And Sydney has, like I said, not one but two bars in the world's 50 best bars. So and again, not super expensive. It's the normal pricing of any other bar in the city. So there's one called maybe Sammy, and then the other one is called Cantina OK, and they're both in the CBD, both in the city. So I think that is something that also people should try. And they've got lovely bite-sized foods to go along with their drinks. Then the other iconic one, which is on Bondi Beach, is a restaurant called Icebergs, with beautiful views. In fact, there's so many restaurants in the city where you can have really amazing views and have some great food as well, and doesn't have to cost an arm and a leg. Again, an award-winning restaurant, Icebergs at Bondi, definite must do. You can see the blue waters from there. So an amazing experience while you're dining. And then one of the few restaurants which actually still move in a circular fashion. So we have this revolving restaurant at the Sydney Tower on the 88th or 89th level. So again, that's something that we recommend that people should do because they get an amazing view of the skyline and of the city when it's lit up at night. And then there's some other unique ones, like think of taking a helicopter transfer to a restaurant far away from the city, but having an amazing location, having beautiful produce, having beautiful food, and just in an area which not many people. It's just almost like it's private for yourself. Or even taking a seaplane transfer to this restaurant and then coming back via that seaplane itself. So I think some of these are the F&B experiences that we'd love to see more of Indian travelers who are going to Sydney and New South Wales, be a part of.
Awesome. So, Samar, moving on to a little bit of a personal question. When you go for brunch in Australia, what is your go-to order? Like, what are some of the things that you tend to order?
You mean at breakfast or?
Yeah, at breakfast or like between breakfast and lunch, those 11 a.m. brunches that you go for. Now, generally what I would order is a salmon bagel or like a halloumi and fried eggs on toast. So like what comes to your mind when I talk about brunch? Because Australia and brunches are great and the produce is incredible. And you see that in Sydney more than anywhere else in Australia. So what is your like go-to order?
So mine would probably be a coffee and a croissant.
Okay.
There's an amazing, like even at these cafes, and I was there recently in May, just from the hotel where I was staying. There was this amazing coffee and place that served just croissants, and that's pretty much all they did. So whenever I would feel hungry midday or before midday, I would just probably go there and grab a croissant. And there's so many varieties. There's the sweet varieties. You have all the savory ones, and obviously to have a coffee go with it. And they're pretty large, not small size ones. So it's a big serving of croissant. I know that croissant in the Indian context means, oh, it's a small bite-sized kind of food, but no, in Sydney it's quite large and it's quite filling, so it does the job pretty well. And you can have it with, you can have eggs, you can have vegetables, you can have meat, you can have seafood, uh, cheese, like you said, halloumi, feta, or different kinds of cheeses. Wide variety, really
I
wide
think
variety.
the list definitely is endless. Now, we've spoken about food, coffee, and all of that. One thing you mentioned, or one thing that comes to your mind
Yeah,
when you go beyond the Opera House and the Harbour Bridge, are beaches. And
correct.
now, of course, the most famous one in Sydney is Bondi. But Bondi can become very busy because all of the tourists also tend to go there. All of the locals also tend to go there. And you mentioned a couple of beaches other than that. Now, Sydney is known for something called ocean pools. Now,
Yes.
uh, I'd like you to just explain to our listeners what an ocean pool actually is, because I have been on many of the walks along the beaches of Sydney, and just seeing those ocean pools is fun, and you just want to like get into your swim shorts and jump into those. So, what according to you is an ocean pool?
So we have quite a few of these dotted around the landscape on the coast, and in fact, one of the things that we recommend people to do is do this beautiful nature and coastal walk from all the way from Bondi to Coogee, and
Yeah,
on this route itself, and even other routes, you will find these rock pools, which are essentially it's an area which has been made using rocks to
yeah,
make it like a pool. So it's not a I would say a concrete or man-made kind of pool, structured pool, but it's an area. It's like a tank which is made with using rocks, and then when the tide is high, it fills in with the ocean water, and
hmm,
they come in different shapes and sizes. In fact, quite a few of of these pools are in the shape of an eight. I don't know if
yeah,
you have seen that on Instagram. So we call them the rock eight pools.
yeah.
So you'll find these at different places, and it's become very cool for people to just go on this walk or do a slight trek, and then get into their swimwear, or they already have their swimwear on. They just remove their t-shirts and shorts and just take a dip in there and then cool off. Yeah, it's a great experience. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess many a times you have to go outside of a city to actually go visit a beach, but Sydney is one place where you
Correct.
have beaches like right there. And like you mentioned, a couple of restaurants on Bondi itself, you can go to the beach, then you can enjoy a nice snack or a lunch. And often, like, with a beach town, it's not only fish and chips. You can get like healthy stuff, you can get vegan stuff, you can get everything. So that's
Absolutely.
one cool thing. Now, moving on to the third thing that you mentioned, and that was Hunter Valley. And Hunter Valley, of course, known for a number of things, but it's also known, like you said, for its wine tastings.
Correct.
Now, I want to ask you one question here, because whenever people go to Australia, they like if they're going in a group tour, of course, we take everyone for a wine tasting, and that's all said and done. But when someone's going on a customized holiday, like we organize at Veena World, people often tend to self drive. But if you're going for a wine tasting, you cannot drink and drive. So, what is
Correct.
a solution to that?
Oh, look, there's quite a few, and we know this because a lot of people want to do the same thing, like you said, doing it on self-drive. So the few ways that you can address this. One is you take a tour service once you're in Hunter Valley that has a package of 2, 3, 4 vineyards, and then it picks you up from your hotel and drops you back to your hotel in the evening after you're done. Yeah, so it's like either you're part of a tour, or you can even do this. You can hire this exclusively for yourself, whether it's a group of friends or a couple, or even a family. You can do that. Other option is to do helicopter winery tours. So you go from one winery to the other and use helicopter as a transfer.
Wow, that
Yeah, so
sounds,
that's
yeah,
that's an amazing option because you also get to see the vineyards from above the air, and you can really understand then the expanse and how large these places are and what it takes to make a wine and a vineyard of that scale, make it operational. So these are a few of the options. There are also taxis are available, so you can book taxis and you can use that as a service. But we definitely recommend one of the other options. That is, you either become part of a wine tour
Yeah.
with another group, or you can hire it for yourself. Or the third one is doing a helicopter transfer. Yeah,
I quite agree, because becoming a part of the wine tour, they pick you up from your hotel or where you're staying. They do all of these wineries. Instead of you going and looking out for one that you'll pick off Google,
right,
these people know what they're doing, and then like
right,
you get the best experience. Now,
absolutely.
along with wine tastings, what are some of the other things that you can really do in Hunter Valley?
So Hunter Valley, there's a lot of other activities like horse riding. You can do. Again, you can take a walk in the vineyards. You can go on an old horse carriage ride through the vineyards. There's You can do courses, making food, or how to pair food with wine. So there's wine theaters, wine appreciation programs, wine classes, wine tastings, of course, at the different vineyards, and then eating food, because you're going to be hungry, right? After all that moving around, so you're going to want to eat. So there's amazing cafes in the vineyards itself, cafes and restaurants which are open from morning, like from breakfast on till evening dinners. And then there's an amazing place called the Hunter Valley Gardens, which even has an Indian themed garden there. So
Oh,
you
nice.
can, yeah, you can do a tour of the Hunter Valley Gardens. So there's quite a bit. You can do hot air ballooning early in the morning, do a beautiful sunrise hot air ballooning, and have that followed up uh, with a beautiful champagne, or a wine-based breakfast. So some amazing shots they will get to see, and you also get to see wildlife. So when you're up in the air in the hot air balloon early in the morning, you can spot kangaroos in the wild. So you can kill two birds with one stone.
Yeah, nothing like it, right? Like, because
Absolutely,
it's like
absolutely.
often people go to Australia and sometimes don't get to spot a kangaroo. And,
Yeah.
we've grown up thinking that Australia is the place for kangaroos. So,
Yes,
like,
it
yeah,
is. It is
yeah,
absolutely.
fair.
Yeah.
Now, Samar, of course, discuss the three things that come to your mind and discussed how it actually works. Now, whenever we think about Australia, it's always been cricket or Bollywood that have made Australia much closer to Indian travelers. Now, when we talk about Sydney and New South Wales, a trip there isn't complete with some adventure or outdoor activities, right?
Right. Right.
And see, we've talked about in last week's newsletter, which you can subscribe to on the Veena website. We spoke about the Sydney Harbour Bridge climb. You can actually
Right.
climb the bridge.
Right.
Then
Right.
like a couple decades ago, Amir Khan and Preeti Zinta told us that you can do a helicopter ride, which gives you great views of the harbour and all of that.
Right. Right.
Now, not only sticking to Sydney, but the entire state of New South Wales,
Yeah.
what are
Yeah.
some of the unique outdoor or adventure activities that you would recommend? And here I'm not asking you for one or two, like
Yeah.
whatever comes to your mind, and it could be for different age groups. So just for our listeners.
No, this is very true, because I think increasingly now uh, I see that travelers are wanting to be not just passive adventure seekers, but more active, more involved in that adventure experience that they've seen on TV, or they've seen their Hollywood star doing it, or they've seen you know, Amir Khan or do it, for example. So there's quite a few that we actually promote, and I think which are easily doable as well, which are not really so hardcore that someone needs to have a do some training. And also, one of the most popular ones, like you said earlier, is helicopter rides, scenic helicopter rides, but even scenic flights, like in a seaplane. Like I was sharing earlier. So that's something that you can just be a passenger and enjoy it. But skydiving is increasingly popular, and there's lots of places in Sydney and New South Wales along the coast that you can enjoy the skydive. So whether it's up north, you can do it in a place called Byron Bay, which is the easternmost point of the Australian continent, or you can do it in south in a place called Wollongong. So you can do it on the beach. And from when you're high up there, 15,000 feet above sea level, you can actually see the outline of the continent. So that's amazing sights that you can have from there. Then not many people know that well, not little, but in comparison, yes, because Australia is an island, but Australia has many other islands as well. And New South Wales has this little gem of a place which is about a 2.5 hour flight away, called Lord Howe Island. Lord Howe Island is famous for its biodiversity, marine life, and at any given point of time, only 400 people are allowed to be on the island on a day. But there's amazing diving that you can do there. It's the southernmost reef of the continent, so it's pristine. It's absolutely unspoiled. It's not commercialized, so you get to see some really beautiful corals and marine life there. But even if you don't want to go onto Lordo Island, there's a place called Jervis Bay. Now Jervis Bay also has a lot of these snorkeling and diving options. So it's you can do a lot of this in different parts of New South Wales. Then dolphin and whale watching cruises are very popular. You can even do boom netting, so that's getting into the water and being close to those dolphins while they pass you by. So that is great. And in season, which is usually in between May and September, the whales migrate from colder climates, moving up north into warmer climates. So there's some great places across the coast of New South Wales that you can get to see. Get to see these whales. Then some man-made activities like learning how to surf on Bondi Beach or Manly Beach or any of the other regional beaches in New South Wales. That's something that's very popular. And something called flyboarding. So I don't know if you know, but this it's a device where you float on if you float on the water and you use your pressure and the pressure of water to move, to change direction up and down, go in the water, come out of the water. So that's again popular for locals and even for international visitation. Then if people are who are not that much keen on water-based activities, you can move inland. You can do things like the world's longest zip line, which is at a place called Treetop Adventures in the Central Coast. So it's really long, and you can do walk around that. Then you can do horse riding in a place called Glenworth Valley, again in the Central Coast. You can do kayaking. You can do archery. Uh, you can do glamping, staying in a tent overnight. So yeah, so different kinds of adventures to suit very different kinds of appetites. Yeah.
No,
It's a
because
whole, a
like,
whole list available.
yeah, like people used to think that, well, a helicopter ride or scuba diving in the Great Barrier Reef were two things that one should do in Australia. But often people forget that Australia can't be just a one visit country. It is a multi-visit country. And that's why, like,
Absolutely.
the things that you mentioned, especially Lord Howe Island that you mentioned, which is a 2 hour plane ride from Sydney. I found it, like, when I was researching before our podcast, I found it fascinating that only a certain number of travelers or tourists are allowed onto that island.
Yeah.
And all of the photos and videos that I saw are like pristine beaches, some of the
Yeah.
best beaches that you will see, great landscapes and all of that.
Yeah.
And this skydiving instance of, we've grown up seeing Australia, and like not the largest country in the world, but one of the top 10 largest countries in the world, right? We've
Right.
grown up seeing Australia having its coastline on a map. Now,
Yeah.
actually skydiving and seeing that coastline, seeing like how those beaches and the bays are, is quite fascinating. And that would really give you perspective on how the entire
Yeah.
country is. So
Correct.
adventure knows no bounds, and these are just items that people can tick off their
Yeah. I
bucket
mean,
list. Yeah.
absolutely. And if look, people have a fear of heights or fear of water, then there's enough and more to do inland as well. So I mean, the landscape of Australia is such that you can do lots of these walks and treks. Some are more challenging than the others, but the best part is that you can choose, based on your skill level, what you can do. Mountain biking, that's something else that you can do.
Oh,
There,
nice.
there, there are service providers who will offer you mountain biking, and they train you on how to ride that bike, and you can explore the mountains on a mountain bike trail. So some of these things are not that we do on a daily basis or would ever consider doing on an everyday basis, given that we're all living in cities. But these are all accessible, and they're accessible within a very close, within a close, within close proximity
Yeah. Yeah.
of the city itself. So you just go 1-2 hours away from the city, and you can enjoy all these amazing experience in nature and natural lands.
And one of the good things is that, like, you're driving on the same side of the road as you're driving here in India, right? So
Correct.
it becomes just easier picking up a car and actually going and exploring all of these things. Now, you mentioned surfing lessons not only at Bondi but also in a place called Byron Bay. Now, often like on Instagram, we keep seeing different videos of um Chris Hemsworth being in Byron Bay and the Hemsworth brothers actually, like,
Yeah.
it's known for its celebrity spotting because a lot of the celebrities tend to fly to Sydney and then go there. And the
Yes.
Hemsworth brothers actually being from there, people are like, oh, we might actually be able to
Yeah.
go and spot like one of the Avengers and all of that. Now, of course, leaving the celebrity spotting aside, I just wanted to know, like, what is Byron Bay and what makes it so special?
So I think it's just the place, the location, the people, and just the vibe of the whole environment. It's very, very laid back, very casual. It's like a large resort with hundreds of people who are coming there to just be a part of that nature experience. They're surfing there. There are dolphins right next to them while they're surfing, and it's all coexisting.
Mhm.
And again, it's the history, the culture. Like I said, it's the easternmost point of the continent. There's this beautiful lighthouse called the Cape Byron lighthouse over there. You get the most spectacular sunrises and sunsets, and there's amazing trails, hiking and trekking trails is there over there. Some amazing accommodation,
Yeah.
from apartments to homes like 3 4 bedroom homes and villas that you can rent to hotels, whether it's large hotels or even boutique hotels, and then lots of food and beverage. So because most of Australia and Sydney and New South Wales is no different, a lot of the people use the same produce that is grown in the state and make something fascinating out of it. So F&B again across wherever you go, but so much more in this region in Byron Bay, where you get a lot of this produce. There's some amazing cafes and restaurants over there. So again, like I said earlier, they are not really hatted restaurants, but they're award-winning restaurants. So very very popular with locals, and you will find them quite busy. In fact, a lot of people, in fact, one of the current MasterChef judge is Andy. Him and his friends, they have a restaurant in Byron Bay. It's called the Farm. So it's called the Three Blue Ducks at the Farm. Well, it's a massive farm, and they've got this very nice restaurant set up there with the cafe and proper dining
Have
and
you,
different
like,
things
Samar,
there.
have you met any of the MasterChef judges?
I have actually. I
Yeah.
have. Yeah. I've been
And
to their. I've been to the restaurants. I've seen quite a few of the master chefs who come as guest judges on the show. I've been to their outlets and also had some interactions with them, and it's amazing that because they are right there, they own the business, and they'll come and talk to you like anybody else.
yeah,
And
like, up until 5 years ago, or like about 8 or 10 years ago, I used to say cricket and Bollywood are like the common thing between Australia and India. But I think MasterChef over the last decade has sort of become that third thing where, because of
absolutely,
MasterChef, like MasterChef originated in Australia, and or like one of the most famous MasterChef ones was like Australia, like the Australian series. And
correct.
that's
Yeah,
probably the third thing that brings Australians and Indians and both these countries closer. And it just feels great watching it. And then once you're there, you can really know, okay, this is this judge's restaurant or something like that. So that's great. Now, over the last 30 minutes, Samar, I've asked you a lot. As we end, like, I'd like to just ask you one personal question. Like,
sure.
what is a personal travel memory of Sydney and surrounds that comes to your mind, or from New South Wales that comes to your mind, that has over the years or over time left a lasting impression on you?
Look, there's quite a few because I've been, thanks to my work, I've had the opportunity to go back so often. I, I've I've enjoyed varied experiences, but I think some of the top ones that have stayed with me and have, will always be some of those life-changing moments or have made a massive impression on me and permanently embedded would be skydiving for one. I mean, I've done skydiving, I've done bungee boats, and trust me, the skydiving one is infinitely more thrilling. And I incidentally happened to do it in a place called Byron Bay as well.
Okay.
So on the beach, so it's called Skydive the
Wow.
Beach. So you You can come and land on a beach, for example. So it's really spectacular. So that definitely was an amazing moment. And I would do it again and again. It's definitely worth it. And the other one was a very natural experience. So with this, I was with a group, and we went to do uh, we, we went to do kayaking on the open waters in
Mm-hmm.
the in the ocean. So it's not the sea. I mean, it's the ocean there, just off the coast of Byron Bay. So and again, it's very easily accessible. You just land up in Byron Bay. There's the place where you go, and then they give you the kayak. So they take you out, and you're kayaking, and then there's this dolphins that just come across, and they're like just where your paddle is. I mean, it's a surreal experience. I mean, it's like something you would see on National Geographic or
Yeah.
Discovery.
Yeah.
Very, very natural. You can't script that moment, right? It's unscripted because you don't know
Yeah.
how wildlife is going to behave, and they just come there, and they're like, while you're kayaking, they're also swimming along with you in parallel, because they're so inquisitive and curious that they keep popping their head out and keep looking at you. So it was an amazing, eye-opening experience for me. And then enjoying the food. So complete 360-degree experience. I think I've had in so many places, but I think the Byron Bay one was, to me, has been probably one of the most spectacular standout memories that I've had, for me personally, on my
That's
trips there. Yeah.
That's awesome, because one is jumping off a plane and looking at the water, and the other memory that you mentioned was actually being in the water and
Being in the
experiencing
water.
something
Yeah.
surreal. So I guess that's a good way of like probably ending the episode also, because that's what Australia gives you. It gives you the sand, it gives you the sun, it gives you snow also in many places. And
Yes.
like Sydney and surrounds is a place where maybe even a week is never going to be enough. And as a result, I keep telling everyone, because I've spent a long time in Australia as well, that don't just plan one trip to Australia, plan multiple trips. And when you go to Sydney, because it's so well connected from all across
Yeah.
India, like
True.
make sure that you spend time not only checking out Sydney, but everything that surrounds it. Now, Samar, this is probably the first time that you've come on Travel, Explore, Celebrate Life. But let me also take the opportunity to tell you that this is not the only time you're going to be here, because I'm going to
Okay.
try and get you after a couple of months to like dive deep into one of these things, because we've spoken about wildlife, we've spoken about nature, food, the beaches, and a whole lot more. So thanks
Yeah.
a lot, Samar. It was a pleasure having you.
No problem. Thank you very much. It was fantastic being here, and I look forward to being here again.
Yes, awesome. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in to Travel, Explore, Celebrate Life. Bye bye.
Thanks. Bye.